certainly Foo Fighters can throw a whole load of things into the melting pot and make it sound like them.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Foos Files. It's Dan here. Hope you're all having a good week. Back with a really fun episode this time around because I've invited on an old friend of mine from my past career as a sports journalist. His name is Ian Danter, and UK listeners might recognise him from the radio because he's a presenter on talkSPORT and Planet Rock over here in the UK. But he's also got a music career alongside that and of course is a big Foo Fighters fan. So I asked him to come onto the podcast with no particular agenda or topic as such, just a good old chat about music and one or two things he's got in common with Dave and the Foo Fighters too, including a couple of bands in particular who have influenced them. And Ian's actually got another string to his bow, which is that he's a really good impressionist, so make sure you listen right to the end as he's got a couple of really funny ones up his sleeve for us. So I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Welcome to the Foos Files podcast, broadcaster Ian Danter. Mr. Danter, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Dan. It's nice to see you after all this time.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So, first of all, like UK listeners might recognise you from the radio. You're on talkSPORT, you're on Planet Rock, but you've also got a music career alongside that. And even though like broadcasting's a day job, they're kind of linked in a roundabout way, aren't they? So do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I've been in broadcasting since the late 1990s, working in local radio in Birmingham. I was at BRMB for a number of years and also at Heart FM. But all that time and prior to that, I'd had delusions of grandeur about being a rock star and been in various bands to that end. By the time that the radio career had started, I'd sort of abandoned that delusion because I was getting to the end of my 20s. And there's that sort of perceived wisdom that if you haven't made it by the time you're in your late 20s, you're never going to. So you kind of concentrate on other areas. But I always kept the music going. I always kept playing in bands, writing songs. But, you know, the radio career just developed through BRMB and talkSPORT and Planet Rock, as you mentioned, but still writing songs and ended up releasing 3 solo albums in a Dave Grohl-esque fashion, in the fact that I play and sing most things on the album.
Yeah, I was going to say that's where the sort of Foo Fighters synergy comes in because you've done the whole Dave like playing everything. But drums was your first love though, right?
Yes. Drums took him. I was probably about 10 when I'd been having piano lessons up to that point because my late dad, was an amazing piano player. But I went to see my older brother's band rehearse at a church hall in Hobbsmoat Road in Solihull. And the only member of the band that looked like he was enjoying himself was the drummer, Phil's friend, Ian. So I said to my mum, I want to be a drummer. And in fairness to my mum, she went out and bought me a little rubber practice pad on a little angle thing and a pair of sticks that were a bit warped, but they were a pair of sticks. So for a good few months, but up to a year, I was practicing on that and learning stick control and all that sort of thing. I didn't get my first proper drum kit until I was probably 14.
Well, apparently Dave Grohl learned to play using pillows, so you're already kind of ahead of the game on him. So,
I used ice cream tubs as well because I didn't have a proper drum kit for years. My bedroom floor had a linoleum. It wasn't carpet; it was linoleum. So if you thumped your stocking foot on the floor, it sounded like a bass drum. I had the practice pad that I used as a snare, and then I would ice cream tubs of varying sizes as the tom toms. and crinkly plastic bags from Virgin Records hung off coat hangers as symbols.
Brilliant.
Just ridiculous. But I loved it. It was, it was the best way to sort of learn and love that instrument.
Yeah. So how did you get into all the others? Because I can see your guitar collection in the background. How did you pick up all the other instruments from there?
Well, after I left college, my first job was working at Lloyd's Bank, which I did not enjoy. And one lunchtime, this has been in Shirley, a little suburb of Solihull. I'm sure you know it, Dan. And one lunchtime, there was a friend of mine who ran a music shop up the road on Shirley High Street, and I went to see him, and he was unboxing a Roland piano. Roland had just started releasing digital pianos around. This is 1988. This would be. And I said, "Oh, blimey, Pete! Oh, you're going into digital pianos?" He said, "Yeah. I've just signed a contract with Roland. Only problem is I haven't got anybody who can sell them." Ting! Light bulb went up in my head. I'd done grade 5 piano. I said, "I'll come and sell them for you." "Yeah, but you work at the bank." "I don't care." So I quit Lloyd's Bank and went to work at this little music shop called Express Music. And from that, not only did I start selling the pianos, but also started picking up guitar tricks and things like that, and started selling the guitars he was selling there, Squire Strats, Ibanez, Gibsons, that sort of thing. And so when I ended up working at Musical Exchanges in Snow Hill, in centre of Brum in 92, I went in and worked at the guitar department. I wasn't selling pianos anymore. I was a guitar specialist. And that I worked there for 5 years.
Musical Exchange. There's a lot of listeners to this are actually in America, and they're going to be like, "What the hell are these two from Birmingham banging on about?" But I got my first guitar from Musical Exchange. It's right behind me. It's a white Squire Strat. So,
well, for the uninitiated, Musical Exchanges it became the biggest guitar store in Europe. So it's right it's not there anymore, but it was right in the centre of Birmingham. And it had a massive kind of Aladdin's cave of gear, because the Musical Exchanges, the name of the shop would imply that part exchanges were a big part of the business, and it was. And people would chop in their old gear and buy something brand new, but there was new stuff in because we had deals with Fender and Gibson and all the big suppliers. There was a massive drum department, PA, keyboards. It was a huge monolithic music shop with little corridors and little rabbit warrens that you'd walk through to get from one department to the next. And it was real and it was fun. And the stars came in and broke bread with you. The most famous of all being Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, bringing Eddie Van Halen in with him one day. When Van Halen had a day off their UK tour, Eddie wanted to go and have a jam with Sabbath, but all his guitars had gone off with the Van Halen crew to the next show. So he had to borrow an Eddie Van Halen signature model from us so he could go and have a little jam with Black Sabbath at, I think it was Rich Bitch Studios they were using at the time, the dance studio at Rich Bitch. So it was a real mecca, a real meeting point for not just local musicians, but, national and internationally recognised musicians who come in. Noel Gallagher came in. Gary Barlow from Take That came in looking at keyboards. All sorts of people came in. Even Prince's roadies were sent in to get a microphone from us that was then taken up the road to the Jewellery Quarter, very famous part of the city where, gold and silver and jewellery is made. And they got this microphone that Prince's roadies had bought from us, got it gold-plated because he was in the middle of his gold experience tour, and everything on the stage had to be gold, including the mic he sung in.
Wow. So did you serve all of these then, or some of them?
No, I never served Prince. I did serve Roy Wood of Wizard and the Move. He came in one Christmas with his teenage daughter wanting to buy a guitar and amp starter package for her Christmas present. And he paid full price. He refused we used to call it a "Do you know who I am" discount. He insisted on paying full price for this guitar and amp package. I couldn't tell you what brand his daughter went
Probably
for.
like a Yamaha or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. We used to do a lot of Yamaha Pacifica packages with little Marshall valve state amps and things like that were incredibly popular. At Christmas time, they just flew out the door. So yeah, I served Roy Wood. KK Downing and Glenn Tipton of Judas Priest were regular customers. Dave Hill from Slade used to come in and try amps out all day and not buy anything. So if you got stuck with Dave Hill at 10 o'clock in the morning, you knew you'd be with him till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he still wouldn't get anything off you. He wouldn't. He looking for that elusive sound, and it didn't exist in his head. It seemed.
Brilliant. Just kind of jumping forward a bit, you mentioned your 3 solo albums. Do you want to give us a little bit of a flavour of those?
Yeah, well, the whole premise, I'd written songs in the band, the original bands I'd been in the 80s and 90s, and we'd only ever done demos, the cassette demos, one day in the studio sort of thing. And a very unfortunate event happened. The lead guitarist from the British rock band Shy, whose name was Steve Harris, he passed away. He developed a brain tumour. This was the early 2010s. And it was at his funeral when I was chatting with the producer of what turned out to be the last Shy album. And he was telling me, Steve just felt, look, I've got to get this done, otherwise these songs are never going to get heard, because he knew he was ill. And a little light bulb went off in my head. Said, I've got all these songs. I've never recorded them. Maybe now's the time to do it. So the first solo album I did, Prove You Wrong, that came out in 2013, was, picking a number of older songs that I'd never recorded, plus a handful of newer ones, and putting them on an album. And I did play pretty much everything, just like Dave's, efforts on the first Foos album. But I did get Lee Small, who sang with Shy and Phenomena and other artists like that, to sing the majority of the lead vocals. By the time it got to my second solo album, second time around, that was me doing everything. And the third solo album, which came out nearly 3 years ago now, that's called Rule of Three, I did 80% of it. But what I did farm out on the last solo album, which is my favourite of the three, a lot of the guitar solos were farmed out to friends and people who I wanted to play on the album, like Sam Wood from Wayward Sons and the insanely talented Chris Buck from Cardinal Black and Buck and Evans. Got those guys to play solos, and they didn't let me down. Those guys, amongst others, were absolutely awesome.
So what sort of, for people who don't know, what sort of style, kind of melodic rock type stuff?
It's melodic rock. It's not prog. It's sort of classic rock, I suppose you could call it, because that's what I grew up loving. I was a fan. You can see behind me, I've got the Kiss pictures behind me. I love Kiss, love Rush, love Cheap Trick, but I also love bands like the Wild Hearts and Foos and things like that. And a lot of their sensibilities, more modern sensibilities of bands like Wild Hearts and Foos, kind of rubbed off on me. And certainly there are songs on Rule of Three that do smack of Wild Hearts meets Cheap Trick meets Foo Fighters in a dark alley. There's one song called Massive Passive Aggressive that I think particularly fits into that category. So, but yeah, classic rock, melodic, interesting lyrically, trying not to be too formulaic. And, I love a good harmony, love a good chorus.
Yeah, you beat me to it there, but we're obviously going to talk Foo Fighters shortly, but I couldn't interview you without bringing up another band, the American rock band that you hold very dear to you. And as you mentioned, people won't be able to see the big canvas you've got in the background, Kiss, and you've got the face paint and the costume to show for it as well, haven't you?
Somewhere. I have. Yeah, I was in a Kiss tribute band in the UK. I was in 2 Kiss tribute bands, actually. The most famous of which is Dress to Kill, who I joined in 2005 and played with on and off for about a decade, wearing the Peter Criss Catman makeup as the drummer. Yeah, Kiss were a very important band to me. I think they were an important band to Dave as well. I'm pretty sure he's mentioned in the past his love of Kiss, and he probably got into them about the same age as I did. I would have been about 10 or 11, and my cousin Don had very fortunately got to see Kiss when they played the Birmingham-born 1976. This month, 1976, they did their first ever UK tour, and their second show was at the Birmingham-born, and my cousin saw it. So I'd gone round to his house, and he had Kiss albums in his collection of vinyl, one of which was the Kiss Alive album, which I liked the cover, took it home, put it on, and it's no exaggeration to say that those first 5 songs totally changed my life from that point on. Juice, Strutter, Got to Choose, Hotter Than Hell, Firehouse. Those were the first 5 songs on side 1. And wow, just completely pulled me in. You know, it wasn't about the makeup, wasn't about the costume. The songs grabbed me, you know. And that was that. I was a Kiss fan and Kiss defender from that point on. Because when you're a Kiss fan, you have to expect a lot of crap coming your way from people that don't like them.
Just people who think it's a bit naff, or...
Yeah, people who think it's a clown show, people who listen with their eyes, for want of a better expression, people who just can't see past the image. And yeah, the lyrics could be a bit trite at times, but I wasn't listening to the lyrics. I was the melodic sensibilities of it all, and that really rubbed off on me as I was getting into my teens and wanting to get into my first band. I didn't want to do the image thing. I didn't want to, copy. You can't be a Kiss copy band. There's only one Kiss. Why? But certainly as a songwriter, when I started writing songs, it was their playbook that I used probably more than any other. Certainly initially.
Yeah. All right, and thinking you went to their last show as well at MSG in New York.
I did. I was really fortunate. It came as a birthday present to go to Madison Square Garden, December 2023, and see that very final show in their home city, which was, as you can imagine, a very poignant event for Kiss fans, and how lucky I was to be there to see it. Just nuts that I was one of those lucky people. Nuts.
Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. Have you ever seen that video of the Foo Fighters show? I think it was in Texas, and Dave pulls a guy out of the crowd and he's got Kiss makeup on. And he plays Monkey Wrench and he absolutely nails it.
He does. He's really, remember Kiss Guy? That's what he called him, wasn't it?
Hey, Kiss Guy. I'm looking at you. Did you have a fucking sign thing that you were holding up? Let me see that sign. What instrument do you play? This? Do you suck? Don't fucking say kinda, because I won't invite you up here.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dave's got a habit of getting people out the crowd. There's the little kid that does Enter Sandman as well, isn't there? That is absolutely brilliant to watch. But yeah, I remember the Kiss Guy. Yeah, he does a really good job on Monkey Wrench as well. I don't know what happened to him or whether that led to a suddenly stellar career as a musician, but great story.
And the really, really funny thing was as well, he had his own plectrum with him.
What's your name, Kiss Guy? Fuck it, I don't even want to know. Your name is Kiss Guy right now. You ever done this before? It's really fun. He brought his own fucking pick. This motherfucker.
He's gone to the show with one eye on this. And
most guitarists or most people who play guitar that I know have a little plectrum stuffed in that tiny little pocket at the top of their jeans as an emergency.
That is true.
Just in case.
That is true. That is true. But I know we're going down a bit of a Kiss rabbit hole here on a Foo Fighters podcast, but it's so easy to do sometimes, because if you like rock music of any kind, there's a chance that you either share an influence or a favourite band with Dave Grohl and the Foos. So.
There's a Kiss connection when it comes to me and Foos, because I wasn't a big Nirvana fan particularly. I liked In Bloom. I thought that was a really cool song. I love the video, the sort of Beatles kind of video that they did for it. But there was a record shop in Solihull called Discovery Records that I used to buy all my vinyl from and then CDs. And one day, sometime in 1995, I'm in there, and the guy behind the counter, Paul, who knew me, said, "Oh, you want to listen to this? So what's that?" He says, "You've heard this band Foo Fighters that Dave Grohl's put together? Now he's, Nirvana's no more." I said, "Oh, I'd heard something, but what's going on?" "Well, they got this single out, but the B-side is a Kiss cover." I said, "Is it?" And I think it was "This Is a Call." The UK release of that single. The B-side was a song called Ozone, which had originally appeared on Ace Frehley's 1978 solo album. Kiss released a solo album apiece on the same day in September 1978. And Ace is generally regarded to be the most consistent and, best listener out of the four. And yeah, there it was. So he stuck it on for me to listen, and it's a really good, faithful version of Ozone that Dave Grohl did. And that was when this guy, Paul, told me, "Oh, he plays everything on this." I said, "Get out. Really? Does he? That's interesting." And then a couple of days later, on a Saturday night, I'm at my mate's house, Gray, my former bandmate, who had a house in Bordsley Green. And we'd come back from a night at XL's, the rock nightclub. And we're still in the mood to listen to music. And he said, "Oh, I just got this the other day." And he got a CD of the Foos debut and stuck it on. So admittedly, still in a slightly drunken state, I'm listening to this, and every song, this is brilliant. This is, this is exactly what I want to listen to right now, because, the grunge movement, by and large, didn't grab me completely, though I loved Soundgarden and Alice in Chains. But there was something about this that felt different. It wasn't grunge, and yet it wasn't. There was something that really hooked me in. And so that was it. Foos fan right from that moment. Went out and bought a copy of the album myself the next day, and that was that.
Yeah, I interviewed Barrett Jones, who produced the album with Dave. He's his like one of his oldest friends in the music game anyway. And I said to him that the incredible thing is, and I know you can do amazing things in studios these days, but it sounds like a band. That's the biggest triumph of it. He's doing everything, but it's so raw and kind of almost not live, but it does sound like you. If you didn't know, you would think it was a band.
Well, that's the thing. What you have to remember is Dave will have recorded the drum tracks for each song without any accompaniment. It was basically him and the engineer. So, and I had to do the same when I did my 3 solo albums. I've got nobody in the control room helping me with guitar or bass or keyboards or anything like that. I'm playing those drum tracks and that arrangement from memory. And so was Dave. So, he was only working in his brain, right? Verse, fill into chorus, now bridge, and he's got the arrangements in his head. So big up to Dave for that. And that definitely inspired me to do the same. And I have done the same on all the music I've recorded, where the drums have just been recorded on their own, and then you build the tracks up yourself.
Yeah. Do you think like the way the songs are written as well? Do you notice as a drummer yourself who writes songs, they're kind of imagined in a different way to somebody who grew up playing an acoustic guitar first and foremost?
There's obviously a rhythmic aspect to the material, not just in the fact that the drums are very much a big part of it, but I think some of the best singers in rock have been drummers, in that they've got a rhythmic nature to the way they sing and the way that they put lyrics together. The best examples of that, as well as Dave Grohl, would be Bon Scott, who was a drummer, before he became AC/DC's lead singer. Steven Tyler was a drummer before he was Aerosmith's lead singer. Phil Collins, of course. you can hear that the way that they scan lyrics and the way that they put stuff together, there's a real rhythm to it and a real understanding of rhythm and what makes somebody move. And definitely Dave had that in terms of the what drew me in even more. It's probably why I like him so much, because he is, like me, a singing drummer who's learnt to play other instruments. But the drums is always the center point of it. You can have a bad band with a good drummer and it will still sound all right. If you have a good band with a bad drummer, it always sounds awful. So the drums is more important than the people might think, especially the ones that make drummer jokes all the time.
Yeah, it's funny actually. I just interviewed a drummer from a Foo Fighters tribute band in America who's also a producer, and he made a really good point that it's the drums are the reason really people go to live shows, because there's this whole thing with recording. You can fix anything now with a click track or with a digitization, and you can make everything sound in time, can't you?
Yeah.
And drumming is the personality in the song, and if somebody's snare or kick is slightly behind or slightly forward, it's not necessarily right or wrong, is it? It's just different.
No, but there's also the sound of it, and I think a lot of personality has gone out of drum sounds that are recorded for rock music particularly. It's drum sound 101 nowadays. When I grew up and I was a little boy, Roger Taylor of Queen had a really defined drum sound. Phil Collins developed that really defined gated drum sound. Cozy Powell of Rainbow and Whitesnake you knew it was him, without needing to be told, oh, that's Cozy Powell on drums, or that's Ian Pace from Deep Purple, or that's Brian Downey from Thin Lizzy. Something about the way that they tuned their drums and the way that those drums were allowed to be recorded without being processed to buggery that made them more exciting. But all drum sounds, 99% of them, sound exactly the same these days in rock music. They're processed within an inch of their life, and it does my head in that drums aren't allowed to breathe anymore. And that's one thing I tried to do, certainly on Rule of Three, my last solo album. The drums were recorded at Mono Valley Studios, very famous studio in South Wales where Manic Street Preachers and Oasis and Primal Scream and Sabbath have recorded. And I wanted a big live sound to the drums, and I got that, and I didn't want them processed beyond all recognition. So that's a bit of a bugbear of mine, Dan, to be honest, that drum sounds nowadays. And you listen to that first Foos album, and Colour and the Shape as well, which has got some of the best drum sounds, fantastic drum sounds. And that's because the drums are allowed to breathe, and Dave is such a brilliant player. Such a brilliant player. He's got such great feel. Why would you want to suppress that by producing the fuck out of it,
Yeah, exactly. Well, he re-recorded all the Colour of the Shape drums, didn't he? Poor old William Goldsmith, who was in the band at the time.
But that's pressure, isn't it? You're in a band with Dave Grohl, and you've got to play drums in the studio the way he wants them. He said that in the Back and Forth documentary, didn't he? I know where the root accents should be. What he's saying is, I know how the drums should sound on those tracks. And William clearly just couldn't cut it in a way that Dave wanted. And so William out, Taylor in, as it turned out. And that was when I first saw Foos.
When and where was that? This
would be Wolverhampton, either the Civic or the Wolfram Hall. Forgive me for not remembering which one, because they're next door to each other, as you know. So this would be Colour and the Shape Tour, 1997, I'm assuming. And myself and Gray, the guy that had played me the first Foo Fighters album, and our friend Mark, we all went. And so bear in mind, I would have been in my late 20s at this point. We felt like we were the oldest people in there, because so many of the attendees that night were teenage kids wearing Nirvana t-shirts. I don't know, maybe half expecting to hear Dave just play a bunch of Nirvana tunes and one or two of his own. But of course, that wasn't the case. He steadfastly refused to go down that road. And I knew of Taylor from his time with Alanis Morissette and knew he had the chops. And sensational gig, because I love Colour and the Shape is still my favourite Foos album. For an album that's that disjointed with all the problems with re-recording and doing things over, it's a sensational record. And things like Wind Up and My Hero, amazing tracks. Hey Johnny Park, just great stuff. And they played the hell out of that stuff that night. And that just, confirmed in my head how brilliant I thought that Foo Fighters were, because it was unapologetic, raucous, loud, but really tight. Really, really tight musically. Loved it.
Yeah, it's quite the variety on that album as well, because you've got stuff like February Stars, which is there's so much like depth to that track, isn't there?
I mean the way it builds and the melody and the way that all suddenly comes in with the drums, amazing. February Stars, quite fantastic. There's not a weak song on that album, because then you got Everlong, which is just a seminal moment for Foo Fighters fans. And even the outtakes when you like the Colour and the Shape of the song, which is completely weird, and of course it's just Dave screeching. The version of Baker Street, interesting.
Oh, yeah.
The version of Down in the Park, the old Gary Newman song from those sessions. Requiem. There's some really good stuff that didn't even make the album.
That's the Killing Joke one, Requiem.
Requiem, yeah. With this sort of sequence guitar thing.
And there's a Prince cover in the extras, isn't there?
Yeah.
Drive Me Wild. Or I think that might have been on the Everlong B-side. Yeah. Where did Dave and Taylor then stand in terms of modern drummers?
They're right up there. Absolutely right up there, because I like virtuoso drummers a lot. Neil Peart was one of my heroes, and he's no longer with us, the Rush drummer that, of course, Taylor and Dave idolised Rush and inducted them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, let's not forget. But if there's one thing I love more than any other, it's song drummers that play for the song and don't overdo it. And with Dave, a song like, I think My Hero is a great example. He's just got that steady. He doesn't overplay it. It's really hard to explain, but it just draws you in. And then with Taylor, there's songs like No Way Back off In Your Honor. Just love the power that he plays that with. You can hear his little idiosyncrasies that set him apart. But they're both really good song drummers. And there's people like Mickey Curry, who played with Bryan Adams for years and played on the Cult's Sonic Temple. What a great song drummer. Just understands how to sit in the pocket and play the part and let everything else work around him. And that's where Dave and Taylor both excel.
Yeah, it's serving the song, isn't it? Rather than who can put the most elaborate drum part in the song.
Yeah. I think they understand. Well, I think Taylor's was a more technical drummer than Dave, and probably could do more in terms of flashy stuff. But Dave just had this controlled aggression to his playing. Fantastic to watch, his triplet work and things like that. And again, just sitting just behind the beat like John Bonham used to in Zeppelin. And I always said that whilst Jason Bonham did a fantastic job at that 2007, Zeppelin Celebration Day thing, I would have loved to have seen Dave Grohl do that. I think he would have done an equally sensational job as John Bonham, if not better. But that's just my personal taste.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Rush Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, because I felt that induction speech it ruined Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions for everyone else who's been inducted since, because it was just bloody brilliant. Like they're saying, he kind of starts saying rock and roll's been shrouded with these conspiracies like the Paul McCartney death conspiracy and Elvis sightings and whatnot. But the biggest one of all is, when did Rush become cool? And the Rush guys are all sitting in the audience.
Rock and roll has forever been ensconced in mystery. Robert Johnson selling his soul to the devil that early morning that Satan knocked upon his door. The death of Paul McCartney in 1966 and the conspiracy to replace him with an exact look-alike. Elvis sightings, Jim Morrison sightings, Axl Rose sightings. But there's one mystery that surely eclipses them all. When the fuck did Rush become cool?
And then Taylor, when he's talking about like Neil Peart, he's bouncing up and down like an excitable schoolboy. And then Dave rolls out all the lists, rolls off all the names of their albums in order, and it was the best induction speech I've ever seen. It was so good.
And then, of course, Rush come up to give their acceptance speeches, and Alex Lifeson does the whole blah, blah, blah thing, where his whole acceptance speech is using just the word blah. And so it was a surreal 15, 20 minutes or so for that ceremony, where you've got Dave and Taylor's rampant excitability, and then Alex Lifeson going blah, blah, blah. Brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they did the performance, didn't they, with there's Dave Taylor and Nick, I can't remember pronounce his surname, the guy from... that's the fella, from Sound City, who obviously worked on a couple of the Foos records as well, which was really good fun, brilliant stuff. Putting your broadcaster's hat back on for a sec, another element of the Foos that makes them so popular is just how well they carry themselves publicly, and their interviews are so not just entertaining to listen to, but just hearing them talk about music too, and like Dave's depth of knowledge and he's an encyclopedia, isn't he, of rock and roll?
Nothing I like better than learning stuff when I don't know anything. And I think Sonic Highways as a series taught me so much. There's that moment where he reveals to Pharrell Williams that the Smells Like Teen Spirit drum intro is based on the Gap Band, and that sort of and you can see Pharrell going, "Oh my God, how did I not see this?" And so their enthusiasm, Dave's enthusiasm for the roots of rock and roll and what made him make that series and go to all these different places in the States and write songs that inspired him once he got to these places. Yeah, how can you not love that? How can that not inspire me as a writer to try and write better songs when you can come up with stuff like Congregation or whatever, just by virtue of being in a certain place at a certain time.
Yeah, and I think it shows as well that although they're a rock band, they don't, and neither should anybody really restrict themselves to the confines of one genre when it comes to writing.
That also comes, Taylor's love of Queen obviously shines through, and Dave loves Queen too, but Taylor was a particular lover of Queen. And some of those Queen albums are so eclectic in the diversity of styles. Sheer Heart Attack is probably one of the best examples. You've got driving rock like Now I'm Here, and then Big Bad Leroy Brown's like a Charleston, later on in the album. Incredible, but it made sense. Queen just managed to drive a straight line through all those different genres and make it sound like them. That's no mean feat. And there's not many bands that can do that. Extreme probably could do that. The Darkness can probably do that to a degree. But certainly Foo Fighters can throw a whole load of things into the melting pot and make it sound like them. One of my favourite songs of recent times is Show Me How. I absolutely love that because it's just that little bit different. You've got the little echo on the hi-hats. You got his daughter singing with him. Oh, I don't know. I just love that. It just sends me that song every single time. And it's not classic Foos in the way that, Everlong would be, or My Hero, or things like that. But it still makes sense to me as a Foo Fighters song.
Yeah, she's a talent as well, isn't she, Violet?
She is. The world is her oyster.
Yeah, the Taylor Hawkins tribute shows when she was doing Jeff Buckley songs, and I'm a huge Jeff Buckley fan myself, but I mean, his vocals were elastic, and to be able to pull that off.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a clever girl.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, another talent of yours that we haven't discussed yet, which us lot who've worked in football circles in the West Midlands know all about, is your impressions. So have you got any good music ones you do?
I can't do any of the Foo Fighters. I used to be able to do a good David Lee Roth from Van Halen. Hey, hamala babala zibla babala hamala babala zibla bop. Yeah, man, that sort of thing. And then, of course, Gene Simmons. I wear more makeup and higher heels than your mommy. And Paul Stanley of Kisses. It's real interesting. He talks in analogies. The last album was like a burger. The next album's going to be like a burger with relish and mustard on it. He does that stuff all the time. So, yeah, not as many in my musical canon, but that's enough to be going on with.
Yeah, well, you get some homework for you. You can go away and do a good Dave Grohl, and then you can record an intro to this podcast saying, hey, thanks for tuning in. Dan's the best interviewer ever. And we'll use that.
No pressure.
Yeah, Paul Stanley, he's another big friend of Dave's, because have you seen the tribute, the Dave birthday show
The
at
birthday
the
party.
LA Forum?
Yes.
Yeah, because he's the first guest he brings on, isn't he? And he does is it Detroit Rock City?
Start this shit off right out of the fucking gate. Would you please welcome my good friend Paul Stanley from Kiss is coming out tonight.
Does Detroit Rock City first up, yeah, and he's the first guy on. And, of course, hamming it up. I mean, he's not just a ham, he's the whole pig, isn't he? Paul the way walks out and takes the acclaim of the crowd and strides to the stage and owns it, because that's his playground, and that's what Paul Stanley's been doing for half a century. Yeah, that's great to watch that. And you can see the rest of the band, particularly Chris, who's a massive Kiss fan. He's got that Ace Frehley customized little picture of Ace on his white Les Paul that he's had for years. You can tell how much he's getting into it, as much as anybody else.
How you doing? It's Dave's birthday. Happy birthday, Dave!
So, just lastly, then, you're on the radio. You can play one Foo Fighters song to sort of play yourself out. What song you picking?
Oh boy, I do keep coming back to My Hero. I do keep coming back to that beat and that feel and that power. The drumming. Yeah, I think that's probably it, Dan. I mean, I could pick loads, but I think My Hero is the one that's just pulls me in every single time. And I sing along with it every time. I think that's probably the mark of it, that I just can't help singing along with it. Yeah,
and the evolution of how they've played it live over the years as well, because sometimes they do the slow start with Dave and Rami and then bring the rest of the band in. And then there's that extended bit at the end where originally it was Taylor who used to just go crackers on that extended bit at the end, and now Josh does a really good job of that too. It's just brilliant. It can go off in all sorts of places, can't it?
Yeah. Well, exactly. And they had that time when there were two kits on stage. I think I saw them at Brixton Academy when there were two kits on the stage, and they sort of did a Genesis style drum solo at one point. Taylor and Dave just mirroring one another, just like Phil Collins and Chester Thompson used to do back in the day for Genesis. So, yeah, the possibilities were endless when it came to how they could extend songs and, make the set that little bit more interesting when they played live.
And then just absolute finally then, where can people find your solo music?
Okay, well, they can go to my website and stuff's available there, iandanter.co.uk. That's Ian and then DANTER.co.uk. Or Cherry Red Records. That's where you can get my albums from if you want to go direct to a record site. But my website is there to give you all the links that you need. iandanter.co.uk. There's more about me on there. There's a regular blog that I do on there about various things. A lot about sport, yes, but things about music as well. I've done several blogs about underrated drummers that don't get enough love. I've mentioned one or two during the course of this interview, so people can check those out as well.
So that was quite a wide-ranging chat with Ian, which I really enjoyed, and I hope you did too. But I'm not sure I'll be able to hold him to that challenge of learning how to impersonate Dave Grohl. But you never know. As always, thank you for listening to Foos Files. If you like what you've heard, please do leave us a 5-star rating on your favourite podcast app. It really means a lot and helps the podcast out too. In the meantime, take care, have a good week, and see you next time.